Ladies and gentlemen, from Verizon, please welcome Managing Partner IoT Resale, Erik Varney.
All right, good morning. Again, I was talking to my colleagues today as we were getting ready to do this, and I said, I don't know if I'm the draw or I'm he's the buffer. So that'll be up to you to decide. What we're doing is we have everybody file back in from that break, but appreciate you giving us the chance to be here with you today. As mentioned, I have one of the coolest jobs in Verizon, I feel. I've been doing it for I've been with Verizon just over 16 years, and I jokingly say with my team, we're one of the few teams within Verizon that exists to help other people make money. Because we get to do the cool stuff, right? We get to help find those solutions, those next generation solutions, and help them work on the Verizon wireless network. And we do some really neat things, but we'll talk about that and help you understand exactly what the network is today, where it's going, obviously, as you see there, for the IoT for the future to 5G, as well as where we're at today. You know, I'm really big on ensuring that we know what we have now to invest in. Platforms, capabilities, networks are phenomenal, but if you can't monetize them and you can't make them valuable to you, I'm not really much good to you today. So hopefully that's what we'll be able to share with you and help you understand. But I like to start out in looking at where we're going from innovations perspective, because there's a lot of confusion. If you go to any of the industry conferences, we've got the Mobile World Congress Americas coming up here in October in LA. The big thing now, of course, is 5G. Everybody wants to know about 5G. There's 5G mouse pads. Don't know why there's 5G mouse pads. I'm still trying to figure that out. But they're really fast, I think. But when we look at innovation and we look at it, I know we just went through this really neat part where we did the anniversary of the Apollo program, where we went to the moon. And that was a really neat, innovative time where huge, major strides forward were done. In fact, one of my favorite pictures out there is this one, where a lot of people look at it and have to do one of those two takes, because this is actually called Earthrise from the moon. One of the very first shots that were done from the Apollo cruise, right, where they get to see that little blue dot that actually kicked off the modern day conservation movement within the United States. So some neat things that have happened in that space and what were really done. But one of those things that I love to talk about was that a lot of people didn't realize that there was problems in the early Apollo missions because they had automatic lead pencils on those. But the problem that you have is you always know when you use an automatic lead pencil, when you're using it and you're writing really fast, what happens? You break off that lead. That's really not good in zero gravity, right? You don't want a little piece of lead getting in somebody's eye or inhaled up their nose, or even worse, getting inside that nice sensitive electronic equipment that's taking you back and forth to the moon. Right? So they were trying to come up with all these great ideas and trying to do different things. The Russians had their idea, which was what? Just do a pencil, right? Let's just use a pencil. But one of the interesting stories that I'm sure you've all heard, this is one of those interesting stories that the Fisher company, the company that we know for pens, came up with the space pen, the pressurized pen, right? That they did that for the moon program and made that possible. And they went through millions of dollars and all these prototypes. Well, I hate to tell you, a little bit of a Snopes moment here. Not true. They didn't develop it because of that. They developed it because they saw a need and have been very, very good at marketing the space pen. I had one of these as a child. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I went and spent the $30 on because it was a pressurized pen. It could ride underwater. Not that I ever needed to do that, but it was really cool, right? But the neat thing about this is they've made millions and millions of dollars on a product that a story was written and woven around it that didn't really exist, right? So the Apollo program, what they do, they went to grease pencils, they used regular pens, they did different things, and this actually did fly on the space shuttle, okay? So they did have a need for it, but I wanted to make sure we understood that. Now that is kind of where we're at in the wireless industry a little bit right now. Why? Because when we look at a lot of the different things, I like to throw this up. Yes, you don't need to remember all of this information. I do this on purpose to freak people out. I've been showing this for over 10 years. This is where we've been and this is where we're going, right? The top line is the code division multiple access to LTE. The bottom line is the GSM GPRS world to LTE. The good news is, guess what, everybody? We're on the red on the right since 2010. We're all within long-term evolution, okay? Now the problem is the battle of what I call the Gs. Okay, that everybody says, I want to be the G. I mean, I had somebody tell me yesterday, we were doing a broadcast, and she goes, well, Erik, why are you talking about 5G? I want to talk about 7G. I'm like, what the crap? What's 7G? But now as we talk about this, the important thing you've got to understand inside of this industry is that there's been some marketing Fisher space penanics that have gone on, okay? Especially when we look at what's going on. Now, when Verizon launched our CDMA 1X network, what did we call that? 2G. Why? It was 60 to 80 kilobits per second, pretty slow. It was built for IoT, it was really well. We then launched our EVDO Rev A network, we called that 3G, and then we launched our LTE network when we were the first to do so in 2010. And what we called it 4G LTE. And we were, as you've probably seen the news reports, we were the first to launch 5G, true 5G. Now, our friends on the other side of the house, I call them blue, sometimes the Death Star, depends on what on the day. There you go. But when you're launched with them, they launched GSM GPRS, they called it 2G, right? They launched Edge, they called it 3G. Does anybody remember what they called HSPA? 4G? I called that FOG. Right, F-A-U-X, it was like pleather. Very nice. Okay. They launched it. They launched HSPA Plus. What'd they call it? 4G. They launched LTE. They called it 4G. Not confusing at all. Now, anybody who's got an AT&T phone in here, you pull it out, what does it say? If it's an iPhone, it says what? 5GE. Anybody know what that is? LTE Advanced, sorry. It's not really 5G. I haven't come up with a neat 5G. I'm still trying to figure out that acronym there, but we'll get there. Okay, now, one of my favorite quotes from Einstein that he said, basically, if you steal from one source, it's plagiarism. If you stole from multiple sources, it's research. So this is my research that we've got up here. Right, so we have borrowed this from Gemalto a couple years ago. I like it because it actually shows you where LTE is going and where we're at. The important thing to pay attention to here inside of the wireless industry, we are all governed by what's called the 3GPP. It is a standards body that we all adhere to, thank goodness, especially in long-term evolution. The interesting thing is you see the blue lines that are subsecting the slide there. You have dates down at the bottom. If you pay attention really closely down at the bottom there on 5G release that happened here in end of 2018, coming up at the end of 2019, release 15 is 5G phase 1 inside of LTE. Now, that's a little confusing. Okay, so there's some gray that happens to happen in these battle of the Gs, right? But the important thing to notice within long-term evolution is there is evolution within the standard. The one thing that's great for you to know within LTE, you invest in LTE technologies, the one thing that's everybody's really worried about is longevity. Making sure that their product will work when they deploy it. The good news I can tell you today, you deploy on long-term evolution within Verizon Wireless, you have a product that will continue to work until 2030 at the bare minimum. Now, the important thing is everything that I'm going to talk about from here on out is enveloped in that LTE roadmap. Okay, so there are two distinct paths within long-term evolution. There's the broadband path on the top. Those are for that when you need bandwidth, right? You need more and more stuff. Okay, and it's been a very interesting life for me because my children watch television and consume media. I should say that. They don't watch TV, right? Me watching TV was worrying about what I set for VCR when Star Wars came on, okay? For them, it's what do I want to watch today? What is it, Netflix? If it's Amazon, if it's whatever content is delivered to them, they get it on demand. Okay, so that is what's really important in that upper line is because they really want to watch those cat videos really fast. Okay, so as we move up that path there, Verizon was the first to launch LTE Category 3-4 when we first launched that back in 2010. We were the first to launch LTE Advanced back in 2016, and we were the first to launch LTE Advanced Pro. Well, we did that testing earlier this year. That's when you have 7 bands of LTE, band 13, 4, 5, 2, 66, LAA, and CBRS all running simultaneously. With all of those running simultaneously on a device, you're going to hit speeds of 1.2 to 1.6 gigabit in a mobile environment. Pretty fast, okay? And that's where we go up that path. Now, the important thing to notice as you go up that path, the more complex the module gets, guess what? That gets a little bit more pricey. Why? Because you got to have 7 antennas. You got to have a module that can handle that kind of multiplexing of data. It gets pretty complex. Now, the important part on LTE is where my team lives, is in that bottom area, in the narrowband side. As we've made those advancements up that path to make it faster, stronger, speedier, we also say, hey, well, there's the solutions that don't need speed, right? Category 1 was one of the very first that we launched within that technology. Again, speeds of about 2 to 5 down, 1 to 3 up. Perfect for voice, perfect for a lot of solutions, but the neat thing is 30% less in cost. We were the first to launch M1. Now we're 18 months in on our M1 network. Again, another 30% reduction, speeds of about 80 to 120 kb down. That's what it's built for. It's built for IoT, right? It doesn't need that super, super fast speeds, but can get us some great things, and the cost gets down. Now, and again, we were one of the first to launch NB-IoT. That's even slower, about 10 to 20 kilobits per second. But again, when you have a meter, when you have a fixed type of device that doesn't need to move, perfect technology for that. Okay, so there are tons of solutions. The good news is within LTE, we are certifying anywhere between 100 and 200 devices a month on our network, right? The very first LTE product that I certified back in 2013 took me 2.5 years to get certified. On average, we're now certifying a new device every 33 days. Okay, so a little bit of a change. Now, the important thing is you see on the far right there, because I don't want to miss out on 5G, is to understand that there is different flavors of 5G and where we're headed inside of that. And so you'll hear us talk about Verizon, you'll hear us say ultra wideband. That is our fixed mode. That's what we've deployed already in 12 cities. We'll be at 30 cities by year end. And then we have our 5G mobility that you have there inside of our capabilities. The interesting thing is everything that's within the red can actually fall within the 5G specification as laid out by the GSMA and 3GPP. So when you're saying, looking at narrowband type technologies, that could be seen as a 5G technology, hence why we're saying we need to have 10 years plus of longevity in the technology. So when you deploy a solution, you don't have to worry about it, okay? Now, in real estate, it's all about location, location, location. With wireless, it's all about coverage, coverage, coverage. This is Verizon, period. This is not roaming partners. This is not, oh, it might work here, it might not work there. That's every technology you see across the top, all across that red footprint. No ifs, ands, or buts. We own our network, we deploy our network, we support our network. This is our crown jewel, as our CEO likes to call it, and we take it very seriously, okay? Now, another big thing that a lot of people are very, very important and are very, very concerned about, is rightfully so, is the network secure. From an Airlink perspective, you're not hacking it. AES 128 on the Airlink alone. On top of that, we have private APN infrastructure. We have one of the best penetration testing and security network teams in the business. When people get hacked, they come to us. We have one of that. A lot of people don't know that about Verizon. Okay, we have those capabilities. That's what's really important here that I want to make sure that we call out, is that this is not your daddy's Wi-Fi, if your daddy has Wi-Fi. I had to help my dad, so it was kind of hard. Okay, but that's the big thing, is that everybody's used to, hey, oh, I'll use this technology, I'll use that. All other types of technology in the narrowband space are inherently built with no security. That scares the stuff out of me, when you can have a piece of product that's sitting out there that can have zero security. And we've seen that. You've seen the stories rolling across from some of our competitors that you see that, well, what happens if you don't secure the Airlink, and what can happen? Now, we've talked about 4G, where we're at and what we're doing. Let me tell you about where we're headed. Now, the important thing is, like as we talked about, is that I'm not sitting still. I'm not saying, okay, well, this is what we have, don't worry about the future, here it is. I'm going to give you a glimpse into the future with an idea of where 5G and what it's going to be and what it isn't going to be, especially when it comes to IoT. Okay, but there are some really, really neat things. Now, our former CEO, Lowell McAdam, actually dubbed this at the end of last year. He called this the 5G, the fourth industrial revolution. Now that I do not take lightly at all. Why I don't take that lightly is because when we look at the first three, right, that are in the technology, first one was what? Water and steam power. It's a pretty big deal, right? That's where we went from urban area, we actually created urban areas and started having factories and capabilities. Second one was what? The second was the electrical energy and division of labor, so we could actually have the conveyor belts and things that we have. The third one is obviously information, electronics and information technology, and by the way, every time we get, the degree of complexity has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, but when we talk about 5G being that fourth industrial revolution, what it means to you is that it now says that things will start to make its own decisions. And again, I'm being very careful here. I'm not talking about Skynet and arming your refrigerator with a gun. No, we're not there. Okay, but we are to the point where we can have intelligence at the edge, and we can have technology within the power of the cloud. And you've heard that from some of my peers here earlier today, as some of our partners that we have in this industry, is that knowing to now I can take that computing power, and it's been so interesting to see in technology where this has gone, right, and what we're doing. Now, when we're evolving here, again, we're talking about gigabits of speed at a mobile device or at an endpoint. So things that normally were tied down or tethered to a wired or wireless connection with very limited range, we're now talking about wide range, right? And there's some very transformative things that can happen in there. Everybody remembers BlackBerry, right? I just like to throw that there because I miss my thumbs with the BlackBerry. Okay, so within 5G, there are critical pieces to make 5G powerful. Okay, the first one is fiber. And you're like, wait a second, that's a wireline technology. Well, yeah, I have to get stuff to somewhere else, right? I have to be able to pass that data to where we need it to go. So fiber is very, very critical for us, especially in 5G, because the most important part, a lot of people don't realize, is the reason why Google couldn't make Google Fiber work. And in my home state of Utah, we had a company called Utopia that tried and failed, is they didn't realize that 90% of the costs of deploying a high-speed data network is in the last mile. Why? Because it costs a lot of money to dig up somebody's yard and poke a hole in the side of their house or in the side of their building. So if I can take out that cost and complexity, deliver the fiber and the power and all of these things that we have the capabilities inside the network to do, and put it on a pole top at the end of the street, and then you put a little box in your window, and you have the same speed and power, I've just delivered wireless fiber to you without you having to poke a hole in the side of your house, because I know you like your walls to stay unholy, okay? So we can move that forward. Now, what does it mean to business? For everybody that's in this room, all about monetization. What does it mean to you? What is it going to mean? Now this is going to mean you're going to see routers coming out this year from partners like Cradlepoint and others and Cisco that are going to have the capability of having 5G radios in them so I don't have to terminate fiber. And it's huge. In the MEC world, all of those capabilities that we're doing, all of this stuff is starting to really gel around those capabilities. So where that's going to mean to all of you here is, hey, Mr. Customer, you don't really need to maybe deliver a physical circuit. Here's a router you can stick in your enterprise home, et cetera, and be able to do that. Now, the important part about this as well is that we're able to move inside of the wireless network, which I won't take a lot of time today to explain, is that we're now, instead of being a physical asset controlled, right? Single tower, single asset, single deployment, I can now virtualize that. What normally would take data. So if you bring up your smartphone today, as some of you are doing right now, and you go to yahoo.com, that's going from your phone to the cell site, to a switch, to a router, to another router, to a point of presence in the internet, to Yahoo, and back again, okay? Within 5G, we're actually architecting that so you hit the endpoint, which is the eNode B at the end of your street, and you drop straight to the internet. I can cut out latency, I can cut out hops, I can cut out time. So I make things faster, and I can make things, again, what we're talking about in 5G is sub 10 millisecond latency is what we're aiming for, which is absolutely unheard of most of the time in a wired network, but being able to deliver that in a wireless. And that's what's going to be really interesting to watch and actually do, okay? Inside of that real-time enterprise, I like to say the envisionment for this for me is to really start to take where it starts to impact everybody in this room is that, you know, the HoloLens you see from Microsoft, for example. And being able to put that on, okay, and taking the enterprise and moving it out. So a great example for me is I sit on a lot of Delta planes, okay? Nothing's more frustrating to me is when I sit on that plane and they say, we're waiting for a part to come from Atlanta, my favorite phrase ever, okay? But the one problem that I really have is when they say, we're waiting for a technician to show up that knows how to do it, okay? So this is where you start to shift a lot of this capability where I have highly trained technicians sitting in Atlanta, I have a technician sitting in Salt Lake City with me, and they put on the HoloLens and said, you don't need to know how to do it. I'm going to show you how to do it through that capability, through mixed mode reality, and show you exactly what to do as if I was there as your expert. Think about you being able to be in an ambulance in that golden hour of you getting in a trauma, of having trauma to your body, and you have an hour to live most of the time, and you could have an EMT with the best doctors in the world looking over you in a trauma, helping you stay stable so you can get to the hospital. Those are the things that start to transform the way we do business. Those are the things we transform the way that we interact with technology. That's why we call it the fourth industrial revolution, because we start to see where technology can go and what it can really do for us. Now, what Verizon's going to do when we deploy millimeter wave, as we've already done again in 12 cities, you're going to start seeing a different deployment. You're not going to see technology, typical huge cell sites that cost $2.5 million. You're going to see a little pole that sits on top of a light pole, 3 or 4 of them, because we're utilizing what's called millimeter wave technology in the 28 and 39 gigahertz range to enable these speeds and capabilities. But this is we kind of ripped up a city block so you could see exactly how we're going to deploy and what we're going to deploy in the technology itself, okay? So really at the end of the day, we've got a lot of use cases. 5G is going to be neat. For IoT, probably another year and a half before we're going to see real things. Now, again, what we have today, I have M1, I have NB-IoT. You have solutions that have used little bits of technology and capability. We're doing 5G testing with all of these capabilities. You're going to see a lot of news coming out. You're not going to see real mass market adoption and capabilities for those. Like I said, probably for another year, to be really clear. Okay, why? Because it just takes time. Not all people are going to spend $150 to $200 for a module to put it inside their product. Now, there are going to be some specific ones that are really powerful, especially in the video surveillance and autonomous vehicle space. Absolutely, there's not that margin. When we're talking about a little tiny piece of product that sits inside it, monitoring temperature, we have solutions today. Okay, and we'll be able to move those forward for you. But we're really, really excited about it. Why? Because it's the future and what we're doing inside of that. So, how do we make that work with all of you? Number one, like I said, right now we're well over 1 million endpoints on M1. We're growing that exponentially every month. That's growing like crazy for us. Narrowband IoT for us is our next generation. We have routers. If you don't know that, we have over 150 different routers from different manufacturers that you can put on our network, as well as all of these other capabilities inside of the network. So we're extremely excited to partner with you. We're extremely excited to be here today and being able to be a great partner and being able to share a lot of these questions. So, no questions now. But I will be here at lunch. So we'll leave it at that, and I appreciate your time.